So what we're going to talk about tonight, and I will try and get as much of this in as I can, but I'm going to send you to sleep tonight with a bunch of information that I trust will be helpful to you. You cannot learn everything there is to know about your child's learning needs and his or her executive function challenges or issues in an hour and change. But I did provide at the end of the presentation some very practical applications for you. But I want you to try and understand very fully what the executive functions are and how profoundly important they are to us as people, and certainly to our boys and girls as learners. This image is one that I always use whenever I am working with a youngster, whenever I am training a teacher of any kind. I orient them to
replay your message, press 1. To delete and re-record your message, press 3.
I'm terribly sorry.
Press 4.
I had Mrs. Taib on the line and I had forgotten to end our phone call. So that's what that interruption was. I ask people to keep this question in mind and to work with me to learn how to answer, who is this child standing in front of me? It may be, who is this child before me and how must I teach her? Who is this child before me and how must I raise him? How shall I discipline? How shall I encourage? Because you have to take into consideration that every one of us has a very specific neurology and has a very particular temperament and personality style. Some of you have heard me reference before my twin sons, who do not share a single common feature, as in they are quite fraternal, and have entirely different personality styles and temperaments. One, everything rolls off his back. The other one takes it right to his heart. One is as outgoing as can be. The other one, he'll decide if he wants to talk to you. Temperament, personality, and neurology. Today, when we're looking at this image of cognition, attention and executive functions, working memory, emotional function, language, academics, and sensory motor needs, where I'd like you to focus is at the very middle, at the intersection of all of these component parts, because in any given moment, one of these circles may be pulsing more brightly than the other, but they all impact upon one another. And that's important to keep in mind. Tonight, we'll be focusing largely on the circle that says attention and executive functions, but we will also be looking at the circle called language, because the language and executive function dynamic is hugely important. So I want you to keep in mind, who is this child that I am teaching? Who is this child that I am raising? What you're looking at here is the image of the program that I bring to TAL, that I've shared with multiple other day schools, yeshivot, and mainstream schools, as well as special ed schools. When I train teachers, I ask them this same question. How are you going to learn to answer the question, who is this child? And what I teach the teachers, and you'll see there's a part for the teachers and there's a part for the students. I ask the teachers to answer this question for themselves with everything that they are teaching. What am I going to teach this youngster? How must I teach it so that he or she learns it? And why must I teach it this way? Who is this child? Why must I teach this way? And so for educators, I teach them that you must use the content and the service of the skills that the children need to acquire. The other part that's truly important is for the children to understand, how do I learn? What works best for me? What do I need? What do I need a teacher to do? What do I need to do for myself? how must I be taught? And why must I be taught that way? And the story that I often tell is of a youngster who was taking the SATs, and without extended time, he scored in the average range. And it was a very, very long and challenging fight with the College Board to get him extended time, because with a small amount of extended time, a relatively modest amount, his score went from the 42nd percentile to the 90th percentile, which is an enormously significant difference. And he knew that about himself. And his parents knew that about him. So who am I as a learner? I just need more time to process what I am reading, what I am hearing. So we talk about the idea of self-advocacy for the children. So this, who is this child, is also for the child. Tonight, we're going to be focusing on that bubble called executive functions. And as you see, it's connected to attention. When children have attention deficit disorders, whether it's attention deficit hyperactivity disorder of the inattentive kind, of the hyperactive kind, or the combined kind, invariably their executive functions are disrupted. So here's a way of thinking about the executive functions. In essence, your executive functions enable you to be the boss of your brain, in charge of your own thinking, in charge of your own actions, in charge of the way that you learn. So think about it that way. You are the executive of your thought process and the actions that evolve from that thought process. And so we amusingly refer to executive functions as the air traffic control system. How do I manage all the information in my head? How do I manage all the things that I have to do? How do I not pay attention to the music in the background? How do I control myself when I really don't want to be doing this work because it's boring and I hate it and I'd rather be watching cartoons? How do I control my brain and behavior? And that's what we're going to be talking about through the evening. So I want you to think of it this way, that these executive functions are like being the boss of your brain. It's an air traffic control system for how you manage your thinking, your behavior, and your emotions. Self-control. Alrighty. Executive functions are very, very important in showing what you know. And you don't have good executive functions. You don't have good control processes. You don't have good planning and organizational processes. And we're going to talk about all of them, those things in a few minutes. You're not going to be able to demonstrate your knowledge, your abilities as effectively. And read that carefully, everyone. Without good executive functions, you're not going to look as smart as you actually are. And I cannot tell you the number of teachers with whom I have worked who were shocked to find out that a particular child was as bright as we were telling that teacher he was, because the reality was the kid could never finish an assignment, never seemed to be paying attention. Things were always lost. His backpack looked like a mess. Actually, it looked more like a wastebasket than it looked like a backpack. So without good executive functions, a youngster, a teenager, an adult is not going to look as smart as he or she actually is. So let's talk a little bit about what these executive functions are. As you can see, they are exerted, or they are initiated at the outset of a task. All right. At the very beginning, before particularly when faced with something that's new, you have to make some decisions about what you're going to do. As human beings, we have this built-in capacity to meet challenges and to accomplish goals via our intellect, via our executive functions. These are higher level cognitive functions. All right. And what they help us do is decide what activities and what tasks to which we will pay attention. Which ones will we choose to do as opposed to doing what perhaps we ought not to be doing? So they are metacognitive, thinking about your own thinking that are mediated by language. And you're going to hear me talk about that over and over, the connection between your executive functions and your language ability, where it says it right there, telling yourself what to do and how to do it. I'll give you a chuckle. Here's your chuckle. In one of my offices, when I was the director of the Soifer Center for Learning and Child Development, my assistant sat right outside my office in an area that was also a library. And it is my nature to talk to myself out loud, to direct myself. And she had become quite accustomed to that. And one day she rapped on the door gently. I said, yes. And she looked at me and she said, Dr. Soifer, you're talking to yourself out loud, very loud, and we can all hear you out in the library. I tell myself what I need to do, when I need to do it, and how to do it. And periodically, I will say to myself, finish what you're doing before you start something else, because I can do that for myself. I have good language skills and I'm aware of my executive functions and how I need to control them. Similarly, one of my colleagues, a psychologist, her office was right across from mine, and I laugh every time I think of this. I walked out of my office talking to myself. She walked out of her office talking to herself. We made eye contact and said, not talking to you, and laughed because we were each telling ourselves what we had to do next. So it was kind of funny, but we could each do it. These executive functions are the management functions of your mind. They're the boss, the control tower that activate and then pull together and then control all of these mental functions, all of your thought processes and your behavior. You have to stop for a minute and think about how much of this you do for yourself on a regular basis. So what I'm going to do for you is go through what the executive functions are and talk about the two major sets of them, all right? What I want you to keep in mind is when you have good executive functions, you can organize your behavior over a period of time, and you can override immediate demands in favor of long-term goals. Oh boy, do I want some ice cream. I'll just have a little bit before I finish this lecture. I'll be right back. No, I won't. I am going to finish this right now. It helps us with these skills, these good executive function skills. We can plan and organize activities. We can stay focused and sustain our attention on a task. And as I have often said, being a child of the 60s, we can keep on keeping on, persist to finish a task, and then go get the ice cream, okay? There are two sets of executive functions. The first set you'll see are thinking skills that enable us to pick, to choose, to select, and work towards achieving our goals. You see the list, and I'm going to go through them with you in a moment or three. And then the second set are the skills that we need for guiding and modifying our behavior. So this is sort of an overview. These are the two major sets of executive functions. Keep in mind See where it says self-regulation of affect? This is also about managing our emotions, all right? Monitoring our thoughts and feelings, regulating our behavior. So it's not just for academic purposes. I want you to keep that in mind. And I assure you that good executive functions are enormously, enormously valuable, all right? So they help us make decisions. They help us plan. They help us keep on keeping on whenever we are confronted with a novel task. So let's take a moment to say, these are problem-solving skills. And they are enormously important to everyday life, for school, for work, for family, for social interactions, because the impulsivity that we see when children don't have good response inhibition can sometimes be highly disruptive, all right? And it's important when you think about the concept of automaticity, so that when you know what's your phone number, you know how to dial your number, you don't have to think about it. And the example that I always give is my mom lived in Brooklyn. Her area code was 718. Anytime that I had to dial a 718 area code, I almost invariably called my mother, because it was a stimulus response. It was an automatic kind of thing. So you have to be able to manage. You have to be able to stop and analyze what you're going to do and how you're going to do it, rather than act. Okay, so let's take a look at these skills. All right, so these executive functions, all right, I love that, the faces on these kids, because we see them developing very, very early on. So let's talk a little bit about each of them. You see those Legos and those blocks, whether they're building a fort, an airport, or whether they have homework to do. They have to go through these steps. These are the first set, the thinking skills to choose a goal and achieve the goal. So the first one is planning. And that, in essence, is the ability to create a roadmap, so to speak, for how I'm going to finish this job. How am I going to complete this task? And it also includes being able to make decisions about what's important to focus upon and what I have to ignore. The first room that they sent me to in this hotel was gorgeous, except that there was background music. And I thought, oh, what a wonderful space. Wait a minute. I'm going to be distracted, and so are you, by that background music. I'm not sitting here having a chat with my friend. I'm attempting to engage you in learning, all right? So you have to make a decision about what's important to focus upon and what you have to ignore. And I'm going to give you a grand example in just a moment. The second one has to do with organizational abilities. Now, that means being able to arrange or place things in order according to some system. If you are interested, you can go to my website and take a look at one of my hobbies, which is building elaborate Legos. Don't ask how many Legos I have, and we will not discuss the expense of all of those Legos, but they used to decorate my office. Well, the largest Lego that I ever built was one of the Taj Mahal, which was over 6,000 pieces. You ready? 162 different shapes, most of them beige. So I had to make a plan for how I was going to manage all of these pieces, 6,000 of them. And I've planned an organizational system. I had my folding bridge table in front of me, That's where I did my work. And alongside of me, I had that table that we take out for Thanksgiving, you know, that long one that seats 12 people. And I had pieces of paper or paper cups with the image of the shape that was in that cup, and I had them in size order places. All right. Now, some people might say that that's a little bit of obsessive compulsive disorder. I say that's exceptionally good planning and organization. I laid them out by size so that I wasn't constantly searching around and trying to find a 2x2 piece. It is the same thing when you're planning a dinner party, when you're planning a Seder, when you're planning what you're going to make for dinner, when you're planning to get dressed. And you can see the difference in those who have good planning and organizational skills and those who don't. And we'll talk later on about how you can support your children in that way. Time management is the ability, your capacity to estimate just how much time you have for a certain task and being able to allocate it and stay within the time limits. I have a really great challenge here tonight because there is no clock. So if I'm looking at my watch periodically, it's not because I'm not happy talking to you. It's because I have to judge how much more I have to say and how much time I have. I have not been on time for much in my life because I have really poor time management skills, though I'm terrific at planning and organizing. And then there is a set of skills, and we'll be talking about that in our next presentation, that are called working memory skills. This is a very, 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 very important piece because you want to understand the power, the absolute power of a good working memory. Working memory is your ability to hold information in your head while you are searching for other information or taking in other information so that you can use them the best together. The best example of that is the teacher asks a question, youngster raises his hand, teacher calls on the kiddo, and the child says, I forgot. Why? Because while he was looking for the information to answer that question, he forgot what the question was. So if your children have been tested, you may have had exposure to this concept of working memory, but a good working memory is enormously important because it enables you to hold on to information. And when we talk about working memory going forward, you will see just how enormously crucial it is. Here's something for you to keep in mind. This is what it looks like when you have weak working memory. You can't hold on to a lot of information, all right? So you forget what you're supposed to be doing, so you don't plan so well. You can't remember why you're supposed to be doing this for your nana or your teacher or your brother, so you don't complete what you're doing. You don't always store the information very well, so you can't find it, all right? Working memory is enormously crucial, enormously crucial. And then there is this thing called metacognition. That's the ability to stand back and take a good look at yourself and say, you ready? How am I doing? How am I doing here? It's your ability to observe how you solve a problem, how you complete a task, to monitor yourself, looking at me as I'm doing what I'm doing. So for instance, this kind of presentation is always a challenge for me because I can't tell how you're reacting. I can only see my face, and only barely so. I can't see you going, or worse yet. All right, I'm not getting that feedback and taking a bird's eye view on how I'm doing because I can't analyze all that is around me. All of these skills, planning, organization, time management, working memory, and metacognition, these goals help us, these skills help us create a picture of a goal that we want to achieve. How am I going to get there? What route am I going to take? And what resources will I need to achieve that goal along the way? And it may be that that goal is down the pike, but how do I avoid the distraction? How do I stay focused? So this is the first set of executive skills, the thinking skills. Let's take to select and achieve goals. Let's take a look at the next set. Got it. Okay. Now, we have another set of executive skills that allow us to guide as well as modify, change our behavior if in fact we need to. So let's take a look, all right? So we're looking at this thing called response inhibition. In plain English, think before you act. Stop and think. And the best example I can ever give you, all right, it's, you stick your foot in your mouth sometimes if you don't stop to think about what you're going to say, how you're going to evaluate a situation, how our behavior might impact the situation. The perfect example of this, Simon says. Simon says, put your hand on your head. Simon says, put your hands on your shoulder. Simon says, pinch your ear, touch your nose. Whoops. That's acting without inhibiting the response. The perfect example of it. Yes, it's at a much lower level and there isn't a high price to pay except that you're out of the game. But in school, that's not true. In real life, there is a much bigger price to pay. Self-regulation of affect. That's basically being able to manage your emotions. Okay, I am very poor at the technical part of things. And while Mrs. Taib and the assistant director of this hotel were attempting to help me, I was literally saying to myself, Lydia, calm down. They'll figure it out. No, you're not telling them you're going to cancel. It will get calmed down. Breathe, let them do it. Keep your mouth shut because I can talk to myself in my head and I know my reactions to technological problems. All right. And we will talk about in a few minutes down the pike about how important language is in all of this. Then there's the idea of task initiation. I know that none of you listening to this, or none of you that will be listening to this in the future, ever procrastinate. She says, all right. So this idea of task initiation is being able to start a task without undue procrastination in a timely fashion. And sometimes I would marvel when I was in graduate school, my two roommates were also getting degrees in the same department. We would have a paper to write. One of my roommates and I would write notes. We'd hang them up in the dining room. We'd write drafts. And the other one would do a whole bunch of reading. And at about, I don't know, 8 o'clock at night before the paper was due the next day, she sat down and wrote the entire thing. In those days, we typed and handed in the paper because what she could do was she was best when she worked under time pressure and was able to control all of her thinking, get started and not be distracted. Not me. I need time to process. I need to start, analyze, think again. Being flexible What that means is the ability to revise a plan in the face of an obstacle. All right, there's a setback, or you've just gotten new information. Oh my goodness, or wait a minute, is this right? It evolves the ability to adapt to changing conditions. And we see so many children, no, it's supposed to be this way. I don't want to do it that way. If this is sounding like any of your children, I understand. All right. So being able to be flexible, try it another way. And knowing how to talk to a youngster who's in that state about being flexible is not always so easy. And then there is the notion of goal-directed persistence. You know what that means in plain English? To keep on keeping on, all right? The capacity, what's the word I want? The drive to follow through on the completion of a goal and not to be put off by other demands, by other interests, by other things you'd much rather be doing, just to keep on keeping on. All right. So in the bottom line, all of these definitions, all of these component parts, here's the summary. Your executive functions are the management functions of your mind that activate, regulate, they get them started and then they control and integrate a wide variety of these mental functions. And you know what? Without good executive functions, your ability to perform the tasks of everyday life, of school, of work, may not be as effective as your overall intellect would suggest that they could be. Ready? So again, this is the breakdown of two sets of the component parts of the executive functions, being the boss of your brain. All right. So in somewhat more plain English, I will summarize for you. You see what I'm doing? I've given you the big lotta, and now I am summarizing it for you, which is an important concept, especially for parents and for teachers, by providing background knowledge, prior knowledge. I can put another layer on and teach you something to which you've already had some exposure, albeit within the last 10 minutes. All right. So what are the executive functions? They are thinking processes that enable a child to control, to modify, to regulate his or her behavior. And this part is really, really, really important because it involves the working memory. All right, you got that part. It involves the ability to inhibit your behavior, control yourself, get a grip, and cognitive flexibility. So your working memory, pay attention, remember, know what facts you need, use them while you're doing the task. Inhibitory control, follow the rules, control your emotions, delay gratification. What does that mean? You're going to get a snack when this is all done, and all done means it has the following parts. All three are done. And then cognitive flexibility. Yes, you can make plans. Yes, you can make judgments, but you have to be able to self-correct and shift. All right. You have to be able to make an adjustment if you need to. Good executive functions always lead to the development of greater social, emotional, and cognitive skills. They make you more functional, all right, because they give you the ability to perceive a goal and how to achieve that goal. So I had to control myself before, all right, because I don't love this when the tech doesn't work. So think about it this way. How many times, for those of you who are teachers, how many times for those of you who are parents, have you said to yourself, I feel, especially the teachers, because we know the literature says that, the bulk of these executive functions are in the frontal lobe, the frontal part of our brains, that sometimes I'll say, I feel like I have to be his frontal lobe. I have to plan for him. I have to monitor him. I have to organize for him because he can't do it for himself. And I don't want him running away and throwing things, all righty? So you see it over and over where the kids who do not have these good executive functions. What was I supposed to do? What comes next? This is boring. It's never too boring. Recess is not boring, but math could be very boring. I'm tired. But if I say, you want to play checkers? Oh, okay. They're not too tired for that. So being unable to naturally impose a structure on a more open-ended or unpleasant task is part of disruption in executive functions. And it facilitates, or no, I don't want that word. It doesn't facilitate. It implicates difficulties remembering facts, holding on to information in your working memory, and quote, forgetting. What was I supposed to do? And the bottom line in all of this is that these executive functions develop from infancy through early adulthood. Some of you might be married to a person without good executive functions. So even as adults, you see it. But what we see in little kids as these skills, these cognitive abilities are developing maturationally, one of the things that we see is when you get language skills available to you, when you are able to use words to talk to yourself. I can have a picture of a youngster who was watching somebody else build. Don't hit, don't hit. Don't hit. I want those blocks. Because he was going to grab them, but he was able to tell himself, don't do it. So when your child, your student or your child has language systems that are disrupted, all right, executive functions suffer because you have to be able to talk to yourself in your head, all righty? And if you can't find the words and you cannot organize them to tell yourself, then it is harder for you. The executive functions are the how and when functions of your thinking processes. I remember reading a piece by a very brilliant woman named Martha Denkla, and she said it very, very colloquially. She said, especially when you're talking to preteens or teenagers, explain to them that your executive functions are, quote, getting your act together. Right? And if you understand how to talk to a youngster at that child's level, it makes it easier. These are control processes that are essential to setting and attaining your goals, whether that's homework or building a Lego. So let me make it even simpler. You ready? Here it comes. Simpler yet. All right. I'm trying to give you layers. I was talking to some of my colleagues today about this piece that I had hanging in my office for years and years and years. It was a mobile. It was a stop sign, not unlike that one. And underneath that one, so the first piece was a mobile of a stop sign. Then there was a brain, and it was stop, think, plan. So there was a pencil, and the last one was do, and it was a picture of somebody going. So I knew I'd been teaching this to children for years and years and years before people were talking about executive functions. And I knew I had gotten it right when I went to the bar mitzvah of a youngster with whom I'd been working. He thanked the rabbi, he thanked the cantor, he thanked his parents and his grandparents, and then he turned, I'll never forget it, and he said, and I want to thank my teacher, Dr. Soifer, because she made me stop, think, and plan before I did anything. And there he stood up and did this wonderful, wonderful job of reading his Haftorah and making a speech. Stop. Think about what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. Let's make a plan, and then let's act. Now take a look at this, everybody. This is a slide that I think you might find helpful going forward. Here they are. These are the definitions of each of the skill sets that I've been discussing. So the planning, the ability to figure out how to accomplish your goals. I have responsibilities coming up. I have to make shopping lists. I have to make phone calls. I have to have dates and times for things to happen. Time management is the bane of my existence because I always think I can do things much more quickly than I can. All right. I have superb organizational skills. I have every file in my drawers is color coded. I know if I'm working with a new family, those are green. If I'm making presentations, those are yellow. If I'm going on a trip, those are blue. Anything related to finance, those are beige. We try and stay calm about that. Anything related to health, those are bright red. And so we teach the children to do these kinds of organizational tasks. So here is a good look at all of the different topics or aspects of executive function, the skills that we've been talking about with simple definitions for you. The one I want you to focus upon is metacognition, being aware of what you know and using that information. What do I already know about this? All right. Let me think about my own thinking. So you've seen me and heard me reference perseverance, keep on keeping on, stick-to-itiveness. This is designed to help you have some simple image, and I have another one for you as well, which is in essence a summary of everything that I've been saying. And here's another version of it. All right. So you can hang this in the master bathroom as an image and figure out how it's going to work to help your child. But these two slides are designed as definitions for you, summaries for you, so that you have them available as basically as notes, because I know that I talk quickly. I know that this isn't always familiar information. You can see me adapting. I'm in a giant dining room. All right. I have in front of me a podium. I have a cocktail table there where the computer is propped up, and I am adjusting my materials accordingly. I had to solve these problems, organize information, plan before we even started. You can see that I keep peeking at my watch, and exercise self-control, because when we couldn't get the computer to do what it was supposed to do, I did have a moment where I was going to throw myself on the floor and kick my feet and bang my fist, but I didn't. I said, we are going to do this. We're going to find a way. Executive functioning skills are life skills for your spouse and for your kid. Okay. So let's take a look now at this. If we were together, I would have a great deal of fun with you. This image is from the Stroop color naming task. And if we were together, I would scan the room And the foolish person who made direct eye contact with me would be chosen to take the Stroop color naming test. Now, when you do it with kids, you give them all of these words and you make sure that they can read them. They're all printed in black. And then what I say, I could do this to poor Mrs. Taib, but she's had a long day at school, so I won't do that to her. What I want you to do, try it yourself, all right? What I want you to do is read across the first line only out loud to yourself. Don't say the word, say the color of the ink. Blue, red, green, black, orange, yellow. Black, orange, red, yellow, green, blue. And you know what? I practiced, so I could sound a heck of a lot better. This involves, and this is a test that is often given to children, this is the ability to inhibit, because your initial reaction is to read the word that's right in front of you, to deal with cognitive interference. Something's getting in your way. So what it does is a test like this is measures a person's selective attention and their processing speed. These are measured how fast and how many errors. So we deliberately do this to show you what it's like when you have to suppress and focus. You're so lucky we're not together. You really are lucky we're not together. All right. So now executive functions. Oh my, they go to, and school go together. There is like no doubt about it. Take a look at that list. So there's reading comprehension, and there's writing and studying and homework and tests and all the projects you have to do at any given time. Let's talk for a moment about how each of these tasks, each of these school-related behaviors, activities, is a manifestation of good executive functions. So when you are involved in reading comprehension, and I say this all the time, looking at a word and saying what those letters represent, pronouncing it, is not reading unless you know what that word means. That's just decoding. All right. So real reading is decoding plus comprehension equals reading. All right. So in order to have good reading comprehension, you have to focus all of your attention towards the decoding and the comprehension. In order to have good reading comprehension, you have to monitor, self-monitor. How am I doing? How am I doing? How am I doing? You have to track the text. I cannot tell you the number of times I've seen children be decoding across the line, get to the end of the line, and skip the next one and go to the, so they're they're decoding the first line, they skip the second, start decoding the third, because they are not monitoring their own comprehension. All right, nor are they actively constructing meaning, or are they using their prior knowledge about what it is that they are decoding and attempting to comprehend. They have to shift very flexibly from retrieving this information to interpreting what it means. Yeah, I studied about molecules, but now in earth science, what do I need to know about those kinds of molecules? And they have to constantly prioritize and reprioritize information. In plain English, main idea versus supporting details. All right. And I have seen so many children, you say, now summarize that for me. Tell me what it was about. And I get detail plus detail plus detail. Yes, those are the facts. What is the main idea? I don't know, because the integration process didn't happen. In writing, you have to initiate. What does that mean? It means I have to plan what I'm going to write and define the first step and how I'm going to follow up after that. What words am I going to choose? What ideas, in what order am I going to write? Planning requires that you evaluate and think flexibly. Yeah, I really love that sentence, but does it go there? And then there's organization, forming the letters, spelling the words, using grammar appropriately. Those are the mechanics. And then developing your argument. All of this involves executive functions, planning, organizing, all of the words that we've talked about before, self-monitoring. Keep that handout in front of you. All right. When you're studying or doing homework or long-term projects, you have to plan. You have to monitor how much time am I using. You have to sequence the information. You have to evaluate it and be cognitively flexible. We watch the kids who have trouble spelling or writing forget what they're writing about because they're working so hard just to get the words on the page. And then there's the one I'm sure you've heard about, the kid who does the whole project and then forgets to turn it in. I wish I'd never heard that one before. And the one who was, in terms of the absolute worst at this, was one of my sons, who was a stunning, and he is a stunning writer. His time management skills are another story. And he finally had a teacher who said to him, you know what? This is a 5-paragraph essay. If you spend 25 of the 43 minutes in this class writing what may be the best introductory paragraph I've ever read of a high school student, that only leaves you 18 minutes to write the other 4 paragraphs. So if you're taking a test, you have to plan how much time, plan and execute within time limits. What is the most important information? How am I going to study for this? All righty. Using what is around you. At our beloved TAL Academy, we have cues on the wall. Look up for the red words. So all of these are crucial aspects of school. This next image is just one of my favorites. This was a quote from a boy that we were seeing. All right. His backpack looked, as my mother used to say, like who did it, and ran away. And he was asked to get something out of his backpack, and he opened it up and it kind of looked like that desk, only squashed into the backpack. To which this 14-year-old said, gee, I got to get some metacognition. And we just cracked up. You can't help but laugh. Good executive functions look like planning and organizing for whatever the assignment is or the test coming up. For monitoring your own behavior. How am I doing? How am I doing? This was Ed Koch. Many of you remember the mayor of New York City used to walk around, hey, I'm Ed Koch. How am I doing? Asking people for feedback. All right. By and large, you know how to approach a task, but you recognize when you're having a problem and you know how to ask. And you are an organized person with good self-control. One of the standard jokes in my office was as follows. When I get upset by whatever happened in the office that day, I would find the messiest office or closet to clean. Just organize. If you need me, I'll come to your house. I'll straighten your drawers. I'll rearrange your closets, but it has to be on a day when something is really driving me nuts. And so one of my colleagues, who was an exceptionally brilliant psychologist, but a remarkably messy person, when she would come in to the office and she would see that her office had been completely organized and rearranged, she would come and gently knock on my door and say, what's the matter, Lydia? Because she knew that something was bothering me, that I went and I cleaned up. How many of you have a kid who does that? Right? So I just want to focus for a moment on the relationship between or among the executive functions, self-regulation, and language. There is an enormous amount of literature available now regarding the importance of metacognition, thinking about your own thinking. And, you know, I was making jokes about myself about talking out loud, telling yourself what to do. The role of language in executive functions is crucial. Remember that who is this child image? All of those circles touch in the middle, all right? And the connection is potent, very, very potent between human verbal language abilities and the behaviors of executive control. Talking to yourself in your head, or hopefully quietly out loud. And here's what I want you to remember. If you haven't heard me say it before, get ready, because you'll hear me say it again in the future. All of school is language-based. Every task of school, reading comprehension, writing, studying, long-term projects, art class, music class, phys ed class. Language is part of the process of just about every aspect of school. And all of these tasks are mediated through language. You have to learn to talk to yourself about what you're doing and how you're doing it. And it's very hard when your language system is disrupted. So that when you can't find the words you want, when you struggle to formulate a particular sentence. Vygotsky said this decades and decades and decades ago, that language plays a central role in self-control, self-direction, problem solving, and the quality of your task performance. And think about this. How can learn language? They acquire it in the interactions with others, in social interactions, and then it becomes the medium for learning and for learning how to control your own behaviors, all right? And kids have all different kinds of verbal skills. You talk to your bubby one way, you talk to your Uncle Harry another way, you talk to your friends another way, you talk to your teachers another way, because the communication demands of school are somewhat different than they are at home, all right? And they learn what we refer to as different discourse styles. Think about it. Most of the time, a good portion of the time, when children are in school and questions are being asked of them, the teacher already knows the answer. Language in school is often about measuring somebody else's knowledge. In school, kids have to make different transitions for the way they use language and for the nature of the interactions. How you talk to your friends, how you talk to your teachers, how you talk to yourself, how you make plans, how you discuss projects, how you judge and evaluate ideas, how you rewrite papers. You're not talking about the Yankees. You're not talking about your cousin's upcoming wedding. In school, you have to talk about, how am I going to finish this? Wait until, don't call out. Wait until you're called on. I don't know where my book is. All right. I have to find my backpack. Hold on to this. In school, language becomes both the object of knowledge and the means through which knowledge is acquired. Your language skills are facilitators of your executive functions. My late colleague, Dr. Howard Dem, was a child psychiatrist with whom I worked for many, many, many years at the Children's Evaluation and Rehabilitation Center as part of the Albert Einstein College of Medicine. And one year, many years ago, was one of the first grand rounds I was invited to make. And after the grand rounds, Howard looked at me and he said, "How do you always make it about language, Lydia?" And the answer is because all of school, a majority of learning, much of life in our interactions with others is via language. Keep that in mind. So if you're dealing with children who have disrupted language systems, if you're psychologists who are seeing breakdowns and aspects of language, think about the impact of being in a situation that is language mediated, otherwise known as school, and think about the burden on the executive functions for those kids with ADHD, attention deficit disorders, whose language systems are not robust. Oh dear. All right. Here's a list for you to give you another summary. Language drives concepts, and concepts drive language. Language and thinking have an intense reciprocal relationship. I'm going to say it again. Good executive functions require talking to yourself in your head. And these are the kinds of questions that children have got to learn to ask themselves. All righty. So we know that for kids, this is hard, but we as teachers, we as parents, we as therapists can start teaching them to ask themselves some of these questions. You can't give a kid a list like this. And so I might, if I'm working with a youngster, decide I'm going to focus on planning and organizing. Think of my Taj Mahal. All right. So I have an hour and I have 4 homework assignments. All right. How do I manage the time? What's important? Well, for me, math is easiest. So let me save that for the last, because that'll be easy. Because if I do it first, it only gets harder. Do you see what I'm doing? I'm talking to myself in my head. In our house, we have schedules, and you're going to see those in a minute. We make lists of what has to be done. Nothing gives me more pleasure than crossing things off my list, because it gives me a sense of authority and agency. So these are the kinds of things that we ask children to look for. Self-talk is crucial for children with executive function disruptions. And as teachers and as parents, we can say, this is what we have to do. How do I start it? All right. Ask yourself. Assessing. What do I think of that answer? Could I come up with another one? Do I think that's good enough? Yeah, they always say it's good enough. But then I teach them a good answer has these 3 parts. So what do I think of that answer? Does it have these 3 parts? And I do that before they do the assignment. Okay. All right. So now parents. Now parents, for those of you who are parents, not professionals in our field, those were my beloved grandparents, Morris and Eva Semmel, who had the good fortune of being with us until they were 92. Lucky duck, wasn't I? Who were married for 72 years. When I came home from school, when my brother and I came home from school, my grandmother received us. My grandmother was high school educated, was always a homemaker, a warm, loving, thoughtful, delightful human being. I wouldn't say that she was hugely sophisticated about matters of the world, but my grandmother had wisdom. So when we came home from school, my brother and I, my grandmother would say, I'm going to make you a snack. Go to the bathroom and go play for a little while. I'll tell you when it's ready. Go to the bathroom and go play for a little while. I'll call you when it's ready. And then she would call us, and there would be a snack on the table. Fox's You-Bet and seltzer, bread and butter. We didn't get cookies. My grandmother loved all different kinds of breads. And when we finished our snack, my grandmother would then say, all right, now go sharpen 2 pencils, go get a tissue, and go to the bathroom again if you have to. Then come sit down and do your homework. And people always laugh because the tissue was already there. So, grandma, my nose is running, I need a tissue. No, the tissue was already there. And why two sharpened pencils? Because if the point broke on one, there was another one waiting there ready and you weren't getting up to sharpen your pencil. My grandmother organized us in advance to do what we had to do. And she gave us some time and a snack to make the transition. Now sit down and do your homework. What are you going to do first? It's the way it worked. And it always worked. And you know what? I did the same thing to my kids. I gave them the chance to make the transition. So here are some suggestions, folks. All right. Here are some suggestions for you. Because if you have disrupted executive functions, it's hard to be the parent to a kid who has disrupted executive functions. So where it says model the behavior, talk to yourself out loud. All right. That means when I'm making, if I'm making dinner, I'm making a big salad. What I will be saying is, all right, let me say, I'm going to get all the vegetables out first. I have the lettuce, I have the cabbage. Yep, I've got the tomatoes. I think there was another tomato. Let me get the onions. Where is that cucumber? And I'll need the cutting board and the scraper and a knife. And the kids used to say to me, Ma, you're talking to yourself out loud. And I'd say, yes, I'm planning. I'm planning. All right. And they got to hear me doing what I wanted them to do, which was talk to themselves out loud. All right, first I'm going to do let me wash them all first so that the water can drain off on the paper towels while I'm taking the skin off the cucumber. And you know what? If you do it without being too artificial about it, it doesn't become background noise. They learn the lesson of talking to yourself out loud. So when I would then help them organize their homework, I'd say, well, tell yourself what you're going to do first. Talk to yourself, get it all and get your papers laid out. You know how I am with the Legos. You know how I am with the salads. All right. Organizing time. We always had a family calendar and calendars work. Go put it on the calendar. And we color coded our calendar. And these days, the kids' calendars are probably electronic, not me. I still carry my moleskin with me. But if you organize your time by creating a family calendar that is visible, all right, and you add things, anything new coming up, when is that social studies test? Abba is going to Philadelphia on Thursday. And you put those things, you can laugh all you want, but come over one day for lunch and you'll see that calendar, and my kids are grown, is still hanging on my refrigerator. I do it for myself now. And I make sure that I put the fun things to do on there too. So it isn't only work, all right? Organize the tasks, all right, which means for the older children, if they have long-term projects, breaking them into parts and putting it on the calendar. Goal there are 4 parts for this project. Put them on the calendar. Part 1 will be done on Thursday. Part 2 will be done on Sunday, because in bright red, it's due a week from next Monday. And then teach them to guess how much time they think it's going to take and see if they're right. We made homework lists, okay? And we checked them off. You know why? Because you get positive reinforcement for that. Well, there were 5 things and now there's only 4, okay? Those kinds of tasks, if you do them for yourself. My kids were used to me having things on the kitchen cupboards that I crossed off. And my sons now live in Chicago, and you can laugh at us all you want. When I walk into their individual rooms, hanging on a bulletin board are their lists. It worked. It worked for them. Organizing your materials. Just think of my grandmother, Mrs. Semmel. Get your tissues, get the 2 sharpened pencils, go to the bathroom first, and keep things that are likely to be necessary nearby. A calculator, a pencil sharpener. And here, may I suggest, every other day, clean out that backpack. Do it together. Make a joke about it. Oh, yeah, what is that? That's Thursday's snack. It's Sunday. Yuck. All right, no judgment. What a mess this is. You can simply say, I love cleaning up your backpack with you because we get so organized. It gives us time together. I know it's easy for me to say, but I'm telling you, I am not telling you to do anything that I didn't do myself or that I haven't taught other people to say. And remember my craziness about the different color files that I have? Color code. Color coding is a salvation. All right. Color coding makes life a heck of a lot easier. When I say prioritizing tasks, what I always did was, I tell this story a lot, so I'll spare you, but I went to pretty good schools and I got pretty good grades. I failed one test in my entire academic career, and that was math. I do arithmetic. I don't do math. I don't like math. So I always did my math homework first to be done with it so that it wasn't looming, all right? I tell people when prioritizing, write down all the steps in a long-term project so you can scrape them off. Because one of my sons learned in a very frustrating way that if you don't plan, especially with me as your mom, you may have a problem. Picture this, folks. We're in the 5th grade, maybe the 6th, I don't recall anymore. They're grown men now. It is about 8 on a Sunday night. Mom, yes, honey. I have a project due tomorrow. I need a piece of oak tag. Where do you buy oak tag? On Sunday night at 8 o'clock. And poor Russ had to go to school the next day without his project because I wasn't running around all over the neighborhood trying to find a piece of oak tag Sunday night at 8 o'clock. Nobody ever suffered severe neurotic damage from not turning in their project the next day. We wrote a note and he never made that mistake again. And finally, prioritize your materials. Just think of that picture of my lovely grandmother. Think Mrs. Semmel. See what you need for your homework and get it ready and have it nearby. All right. Coming to the end, folks. Here are some strategies that will help you going forward. The next several slides define all of these for you. General strategies. All right. I'm telling you that if there's a visual, it helps. We can use different kind of organizers, and you'll see in your handout that there are a couple of different organizers. Use wristwatches with alarms. We use a time timer where you can watch you can set it for 15 minutes, and as it moves, the amount of red that is exposed for 15 minutes decreases, so you get a visual. All right. I lay out what we're going to be doing for the day. Right. And we teach kids. I ask all the time, could you write that down for me? Send it to me in a text. Make a plan for how long we're going to do things. And this is for me, this is the hardest. I am not good at managing time. So my friends who have known me forever and ever often lie to me. All right, Lyd, we're going to meet at 1 o'clock at XYZ, knowing full well that they're all meeting at 1:30. I can't tell whether they're telling me the right time or not, because I just have so much trouble judging time. All right. So you work with the kids to plan and structure activities and to announce we are done. And I teach the teachers to do that. All right. Social studies is over. Turn off your social studies brain. You have 2 minutes before the next activity. Turn on your math brain. And you can do that when you're working with them at homework. All right. Finish with the math homework. Check it off. Turn off your math brain. Take a stretch. Get ready for science. It says out loud, and it helps them learn how to talk to themselves in their heads. Checklists and to-do lists. I'll be honest in saying that I'm not great at guessing the time, but that doesn't mean you won't be. All right. I break things down into chunks all the time. And knowing my vulnerability, I always give myself an extra 15 minutes. I just know who I am. We did this with the boys, track and color code. What is a school activity? What is a family activity? What is something for sports? What is something with your buddies? And now there's plenty of time management software. These are all just lists for you to know what exists. Read them yourself. Just keep thinking of my grandmother. Keep the clutter to a minimum. When the room in which they are functioning is a holy mess, when the dining room table is scattered and full, it's a distraction. It is a distraction. There's no two ways about that. And set up a time. Let's just clean up and start all over again. Let's make it organized and not messy. My version of neat and your version of neat may be two different things, and we laugh about it all the time. I have friends who implore me, please, I'll make dinner, come do my closets. All right. I know people who, when their in-laws are coming, they open the closets and shove things in. All right. Because they just cannot organize themselves consistently. All righty. Create schedules. And I know full well that all of these things are not so easy for you to do, for most people. So pick a few. All right. You ready? The one that is my favorite is the mantra. Paper, pencil, name and date. Now read the directions. Paper, pencil, name and date. Read the directions. And if you make it funny, they look at you like, oh, what did I do to deserve this crazy father? But they also know you're smiling and caring. All right. And when your youngster is having trouble with a particular kind of homework, for those of you who have children who are taken out of class for academic supports, for language therapy, and they miss things, they miss parts of the classroom instruction, you have to have a chat with the teacher and with your child. Example, one of my sons is a more reserved person, and he was finding himself very frustrated in a particular class. The teacher had said something to him about his lack of participation. And he came home and he said, Mom, I can never get anything out in this class. There's a bunch of kids who just dominate all the time. So I said, have you spoken to your teacher about it? And he said, I don't know how to say to him, I can't get a word in edgewise. Could you come help me? So we went and the three of us talked, and the teacher said to him, let's make a plan. If you have something to say, signal me and I'll call on you before the girls get started. How many other kids are bothered by this? And so they made a plan so that Josh could signal, and the teacher knew he wanted to participate. And he was able to say to these kids who had wonderful, wonderful, wonderful ideas, but dominated, and it was a lesson for him as well. And he'd say, okay, those are wonderful ideas, and I'd like to give others a chance to share. We went to school together. Not to complain that the teacher didn't have wonderful classroom management skills, but here's a kid who wants to learn and he needs some help in this classroom dynamic. All right. This is really important to everybody. Go upstairs and clean your room. Ha, 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 ha. Please define. I will know your room is clean when there are no socks and underpants on the floor and they're not under the bed, and your bed is made and the closet door is, you decide. Your math homework is going to be done when you can say to me, Mom, I did all 10. Would you check them? All right. Your piano practice will be done, my darling, when I have heard you play Fiorellis 5 times. I'll be counting in the kitchen. Daddy and I like the table to be set in the following way. The table will be properly set when there's a plate, a napkin with a fork on it, a knife and a spoon next on the other side of the plate. Be specific. Be specific. Stop, think, plan, do, and determine whether or not you've done that job. All right. Take a look at these two. We created these daily assignment sheets to help the kids judge how long they thought it was going to take them to do a particular assignment and how long it actually took to help them develop better time management skills. So you can create a version of this. Teachers love this. All right. And checkoffs. Now, some of the kids will say, leave me alone. I hate all of your stupid ideas. And I will say, yeah, I know. I'm sure you think they're stupid, but we're going to give them a try for the next 2 weeks and see how they work. 2 weeks. And the kids become adapted to this approach. Doesn't have to look like this, but whatever works for your kids. How long do you think it's going to take you? How long did it actually take you? When is it due? Is it tomorrow or Wednesday? All right. So there's an organizational system that is concrete and right smack dab in front of them. And then there's another version. Take a careful look. You can create one. This one came from the wonderful work by Peg Dawson, Smart but Scattered. And this one worked very well for a lot of the kids. And we put it in the folder where that subject matter work was. These kind of concrete representations. And you know what's cool about them? You can put the date on it and say, we're going to try this for 2 weeks and see how it works. And you keep the folder. So let's lay it out here. You ready, Michael? Let's lay it out here and see how it works. 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Because then what happens is those ideas. Do I have the materials? Can I do this by myself? Who am I going to ask? Mom hates math. I'll wait till dad gets home. Dad hates math. I'll wait till my older brother Harry gets home. So this helps for planning and organization and time management and self-monitoring, all of those executive function skills. And then as we come to the end, that is my son, Russell. All righty. And Russell and his twin brother, Joshua, shared a room. And I came home one night, we greeted and did the hello, tell me who ate the most disgusting lunch, what was the funniest thing that happened. All right, go do your homework. I'll be in a little while. And I would do whatever I had to do. And I walked in, they must have been 9 or 10. And I walked into their room where they had a long desk. And I leaned down, I looked, and I started to tell Russ what it was that he should have done and how it should have been done and what I was recommending. And I could see his shoulders stiffen. And I looked over at his brother, who was like this. And Russ looked up at me and he said, and I quote, "Mom, we hate when you talk to us in that Dr. Soifer voice." Make sure that you don't treat your child like he's your student and you're fixing him, but rather he's your kiddo. And they taught me a very important lesson. I went in, I looked at a student, I looked at work, and for a moment I stopped seeing my child and started instructing. There's a way of doing it so that the child doesn't feel like he's lost his parent. Such a good kid. Here are some resources for you, all right, about executive function skills. The books by Dawson and Gare are excellent, and you'll see that they have some of these protocols that you can use. I think actually the Dawson and Gare has been published. There's multiple versions of it, but the pieces that I showed you are designed to help you. And you know what? You can modify it, let the child you're working with, and modify according to the age of the child. Dealing with an 8-year-old is very different than dealing with a 13-year-old or a 15-year-old. You have to talk differently to them, and you have to show a certain level of respect and deference and a negotiation. 2 weeks. We're trying it for 2 weeks. Who is this child in front of me? And how I talk to one of my children was different than how I talk to the other of my children, because they need to be seen as individuals, and you know where their sensitivities are. And you don't want to use that Mrs. Smith voice when in fact you're the mom or the dad. So keep in mind that there is always, 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 always a dynamic here. And you must always be saying to yourself, who is this child, my child, who is exactly like my spouse and is driving me crazy? No, no, no. I adore him and I want him to be the best he can be. How can I facilitate that with him without making him feel judged or less than capable and adored? Who is this child? My child. I hope that's helpful to everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Soifer, and as always, for such a meaningful talk and for making these concepts so real for all of us. There were actually just a few questions that were put in the chat, and as you were speaking, you really answered most of them. Some parents were asking about real strategies, that can be used, and you certainly ended off with that. But one question came up for two parents, and that was, can executive functioning weaknesses exist in a vacuum, or is it always an indication of other areas of weaknesses? Or, as another parent said, is it a red flag for parents to check further to see where those executive functioning weaknesses are stemming from?
Those are very, very, very thoughtful and important questions. If a child has an attention deficit disorder diagnosed as such, it's ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and there are 3 formats for it: inattentive, hyperactive, or mixed. Almost invariably, those kids have disrupted executive functions. If a child does not have an attention deficit disorder, but has disrupted executive functions, you're seeing in your kid some of this, you have to take a look at that youngster's language system. Is he able to talk to himself in his head? Is she able to organize information so that she can direct herself carefully? Is her environment sufficiently structured? And that's why I kept making the point about the dynamic interaction between executive functions and language. Those are those are areas to investigate.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Soifer. So thank you all for joining us this evening. There's one more talk coming up after Pesach in this series on May 7th, Working Memory. You're in trouble without it. So we look forward to hearing that talk. The recording of this talk will be made available soon and will be emailed to all of the registrants. Thank you all. Have a good, and thank you, Dr. Soifer, and thank you all. Have a good
Have a good
evening.
evening. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening to all.